Hey everyone, Coach and Hoka One One Athlete Sage Kennedy here with another Training Talk Tuesday. Thank you so much for all the comments, all the questions you guys had in this last week. Top voted question. Hope you're doing well. Also, I'm still recovering from my pulmonary embolism last month. Of course, more vlog updates on the way with that. But top voted question, great question. Actually, several questions kind of in this, but they're all related, so we're going to roll with it. What is the best way to include mountain running / vertical gain into an existing training plan as a beginner or slow runner? Is it acceptable to lower the distance for runs in the mountains in order for the time spent running to be more similar to what would be the case on the flat? When it comes to easy runs, is it more important to keep the heart rate in the easy range, which for me means walking on the uphill parts, or to keep running? If walking sections, should one compensate by running for a longer distance? So a common theme there with adding vertical gain into your training is, a trail runner, you're encountering hills. Maybe you're training for a hilly course though, like the Boston Marathon or New York City Marathon, or some crazy mountain ultra marathon race in the Swiss Alps or the Rockies. So for beginners, running uphill is hard for anyone, really. And it's an extra stress, and that's an important thing to kind of keep track of. So the first thing I'd recommend usually is in your training log, if you're using Strava or a paper and pen log or some sort of other way to kind of track your mileage that you cover each week in terms of kilometers or miles, but also your vertical gain, how much climbing you do. It might be a little harder if you don't have like a GPS device, but you track how much climbing you're doing. That's a huge work output, right? Displacing your body up and down a mountain, grinding up hills. So that's another factor in your training, as well as training by duration or time, right? How much time do you have to train? A lot of times we're limited by how much time we have, but realizing that running 5K up and down a mountain might take a lot longer than a flat 5K. Obviously, you might be able to run 10 miles or 16K on the flats in the time it takes for you to go up and down a steep, gnarly, technical mountain trail for only 3.1 miles or 5K. So, the time is a factor as well. And the training stimulus, in terms of that, is the heart and lungs don't know what activity you're doing. If you average 150 beats per minute for 2 hours, you could have been going up and down a mountain, or you could have been running faster on the flats. It doesn't matter. But your leg muscles will know. Your leg muscles will get used to what it's like to be power hiking, maybe with trekking poles up a 20% grade mountain, and the quad pounding of running down that mountain, or climbing up a flight of stairs or something like that. The strain on your calves, and maybe hopefully not too much on the Achilles tendon or the plantar fascia on the bottom of your foot. So that skeletal muscular stress is really somewhat of a risk. Now, to answer this question very specifically, how to incorporate vertical gain into your training plan. This is going to be a business plug for Coach Sandy and I have a business, higherrunning.com, but we have a lot of plans for ultra mountain trail races, some mountain plans, some ultra marathon plans, as well as hilly marathon plans. And what you generally do is you're sprinkling in some climbing throughout the course of your week, right? It's not all easy, flat, slow running. It's not all flat track speed workouts. It's integrating in different workouts, be it doing some short hill repeats, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minutes up a steep hill with a fast running motion, high intensity short hill intervals. That gets a lot of people a good bang for their buck in terms of developing your muscle power, but also your aerobic power, your heart and lungs for little short periods of time, but it makes you a better climber. It gives you more power, and it doesn't strain you too much, hopefully. But it all does come back to your experience level, how much time you have each week to train, what kind of mileage you're running per week, as well as what kind of race you're training for. Obviously, the big steep mountain races where you got to do a lot of vertical gain, they could be really extreme. And if you're doing a race that has 3,000 meters of climbing or 10,000 feet of climbing, like Speedgoat 50K, it actually has a little bit more than that, but it's a 50K mountain race at high altitude that is this much climbing. Well, we know it's 50K in distance. What percentage of that is, climbing, right? You could do the math on that, and you try to mimic that ratio in your long run, in your weekend long run maybe. So, but maybe it's not exact, right? It's a pretty extreme mountain race. You're going to get maybe too tired trying to do, let's say if you did half that, you did a 25K long run, are you going to do 5,000 feet of climbing in that 25K long run, or 1,500 meters, that would still be a pretty extreme climb. Maybe you live in the mountain zone, you can do that, but we wouldn't recommend necessarily doing that every weekend. Whereas if you get in at least part of that climbing in a long run and you push the climbs, then you're getting a pretty good training stimulus, right? You wouldn't want to totally neglect big mountain climbs. You'd want to try to rack up vertical, but realize most people, their limitations in mountain access or their time limitations or the concern about getting injured or overtrained, you want to dial that back a bit, right? The mountain races are usually pretty extreme. You're not going to exactly train at that climbing grade or that climbing level in your day-to-day weekly schedule. So even when I was training for like the Lake Sonoma 50, I've done that race 3 times. It's a 50-mile race. It was at 80 kilometers about, 10,000 feet of climbing, 3,000 meters. I'd be lucky to do that much climbing in a whole week. There were a lot of weeks where I was only totaling up that climbing. Then on the race day, I had to do it all at once. But I was able to do it because a lot of the climbing I did was actually short, high-intensity climbing at a faster pace. So, as a beginner, you get really out of breath. You're still building up your aerobic base. Maybe you're not used to the hills, or maybe you're a flat road runner, track runner, and you're training for your first trail race. The first thing you notice, what are all these uphills, right? You got the demanding uphills, quad pounding downhills. A lot of people, your heart rate skyrockets, you start breathing really hard, maybe you get a muscle cramp. Your legs aren't used to that steepness of a grade. But the important thing to take away is introducing the vertical slowly, because it is a big extra stress, and starting out with those shorter hill repeats. Now, in our training plans, which you could buy on our website, highrunning.com, you have access to, certain workouts that are very targeted. So, if you're training for a hilly race, instead of a workout like a 20-minute tempo run at 85% effort, 90% effort, you might actually do an all-uphill 20-minute tempo run where you crank up that treadmill to 5% uphill grade, or maybe even 8% uphill grade, and you do that same 20-minute tempo run, except you're doing it all uphill. Well, that's a big work output. You're climbing a lot more. You're getting the legs used to what it feels like to run uphill for sustained grades. And, if you've done a race like UTMB or something, you might be climbing for 2 hours straight with no downhills in sight. So it's important to get the body used to that and sprinkling in that vertical, but not obsessing too much with the numbers exact. So it is a mix between how much you're climbing each week, how many miles you're actually running each week, and how much time you're devoting. Those are all kind of correlated together. Well, the time and vertical correlate together usually because it takes a lot more time to do a long run on a mountain trail than it does to do on the flats. Now that gets to the second part of these questions. Is it okay to lower the distance of these runs? Because, the time commitment is huge. If you're going to do a 20-mile long run in the mountains, it might take, twice as long, right? So yes, the answer to that is yes, you could shorten the distance of your long runs if you're doing a lot of climbing, especially if it's like technical trails, you're going through mud and snow, because the time commitment is still there. The training stimulus is still there, and you're getting a lot of fitness and bang for your buck, so to speak, because you're climbing, right? Your heart and lungs are working hard with big spikes on the uphill. Your legs are working hard on the uphill and the downhill, usually. And, it's a good way to just go by time sometimes. Now, we don't always recommend that, but what you do want to know is that if you're doing a hilly long run, you're trying to mimic kind of the elevation profile, or at least a fraction of the elevation profile of your goal race, you want to practice on exact percent gradients of the types of slope you're training for, right? If you're training for a technical mountain race, you ideally want to do some long runs on technical mountain trails. But not only that, you want to look at the STRAVA data or some GPS data and say, hey, this race averages 10% grade or 15% uphill grade on a lot of these climbs. You could kind of map it out and see, well, you better get used to what it feels like to run 10 or 20% grade, right? And, truth be told, a lot of people, especially in an ultramarathon race, are probably going to have to be power hiking and be more efficient power hiking up anything over 10 or 15% grade, right? At 20% grade, even for the elites, usually power hiking starts to become more efficient because it's such a steep grade and you want to conserve energy, keep your heart rate from going too high, it's better to actually be power hiking. So perfectly okay to run or to walk, power hike on these grades, do what you have to keep your heart rate in check. But at the same time, every now and then sprinkled out throughout the course of the week, it is okay to push your heart rate really hard on short, high-intensity hill climb efforts. Be it 1 minute or 2 minute or 3 minute hard intervals, or something like 3 times 10 minutes uphill, or an all uphill up tempo run. Maybe it's in the context of a long run where you're coasting the downhills, going easy on some climbs. Some stretches of climbs you pick up the pace, pick up the intensity, let the heart rate soar a bit. As long as you're staying healthy, that's the important thing. So it really is a mix, and it is kind of a case-by-case basis. The other final thing I will say with the heart rate is that, yeah, you do want to keep it in the easy range on an easy day, and as a beginner, that's probably the easiest way to do that, is to be running flat for your easy days, right? You need some flat, easy recovery days, ideally on a soft surface, to let the muscles, the leg muscles, recover from all that climbing, but also to keep the heart rate low at a pace that hopefully you won't have to walk at, right? You could still keep a jog going, keep the heart rate in check if it's flat. You start going up into the mountains at high altitude, yeah, you're probably going to have to walk a bit on a lot of the uphills to keep your heart rate in check. That's okay, but realize you could still spike it quite a bit like you will in a race, and it's even better sometimes to do these targeted short high intensity hill repeat workouts, because it's a much higher intensity and a much faster running pace than what you're going to have to experience in the race. It makes your climbing better all around. It gives you power, right? So when you're maybe power hiking in a race, your heart rate might be lower actually, and you're burning through less fuel. You're not getting dehydrated as fast. Maybe you're using trekking poles if the race allows and you're used to that. Maybe not. That's really kind of the idea. So, if you're walking, that's okay. You're still putting in the time out there. You're putting in the time on your feet. You don't have to compensate by necessarily running a certain long distance. Realize the climbing you do each week is a huge training stimulus, a huge demand on your body, and a huge stress that hopefully will make you stronger. Again, all these things are double-edged swords though, because they could be a little bit of an injury risk in terms of straining a muscle, overtraining, overexerting yourself. You don't always want to be pushing your heart rate really high every single day, right? It's why I don't go out the door and try to do fast race pace runs every single day. Your heart and lungs could probably handle it, right? They would get in crazy good shape if you're running up tempo and tempo threshold to VO2 max every day, but the body's not going to be able to handle it. The tendons and the muscles and the bones, you might get an overuse injury. Mentally, you're going to get burned out because it's hard to push hard every day. You're going to, lose that competitive drive that you need to kind of save for the race. You also, might just get overtrained in general with like your hormone levels. So that's why we have the easy flat recovery days at slow paces. We have days where we do slow climbing, sustained climbing, and days where we do the short, high intensity hill repeat climbing. And don't worry about racking up, a ton of vertical, but you definitely need some of that vertical, especially if you're training for a super hilly mountain race. But it's something you gradually have to work into for sure. So I think that wraps it up pretty much with this example. Thank you so much to all you Patreon supporters, new Patreon supporters. Got exclusive training talks on there at certain levels, as well as exclusive content. Thank you to title sponsor Hoka One One, keeping the dream alive. Again, Coach Sandy and I do sell training plans at higherrunning.com. We have a new premium membership program where you get access to all our training plans, and it's a monthly thing. So you sign up, you get benefits on there. Check it out in the description below. We got a website link. Thanks so much for subscribing on here. Submit your questions for next week and vote them up. Thanks so much. Hope you're doing well, and stay tuned for more VO2 Max Productions.